Greetings everyone, this is Rambling Collector back here with another book review for you all today. And I know, it seems kind of crazy that I've been pumping out book reviews on the daily now. But this one here is going to be special because for one, I finished this book literally in one sitting just today. I could not put it down, and there are two other reasons. The second one being that this will be my second dive into a poetry book review. My first one, Cry for Mercy, featuring Peter Okonkwo, was requested to me by the author himself, and I was more than happy to do a review for it. This falls into the third reason. The author themselves, Yamini Tanwar, asked me to review their work, Home to Soul, surprisingly enough, a collection of nature poetry, which definitely gives me a different perspective. So, let's get started. So, here are some of the highlights from me in regards to this book. First of all, the writing itself was very fluent, very quick, and had great detail, focusing on various aspects of nature in the world. For instance, each chapter has its own section where it talks about a certain aspect of nature, whether it be the sea, or the wind, or the cycles of the moon, as well as things such as the nightingale, or the sun. Different aspects of the nature in our world was represented here. Even some that apply to real life, and to real life situations in this case. So, another good thing, so here's something else. Two of my favorite chapters, in my personal opinion, were the Sea and the Sky chapter, and the final section of the book, One-Liners. And in fact, a lot of my favorite quotes, which you will see here, are actually from the one-liners section. But the sea and sky, for me, I've always been a lover of the sea. I don't know, just something about being in its presence, with the wind, the sound of the waves, the smell of salt on the air, the feel of the sand beneath my feet. Reading that poetry really brought me back to that moment of just standing by the water, listening to the waves crash against the shore. It's peaceful, it's beautiful, and in my opinion, it really puts me at ease. As for the one-liners, a lot of these I feel could be used as good motivational quotes, or even just something you can put down for your daily life, or as a daily quote for you to read to help you get through the day. And another thing is that through this book's writing, it expresses the emotions of the beauty of the natural world. It really makes you feel like you are seeing that aspect of our world. Brings it into light. And before, with Peter Okonkwo's work, that one was far more emotional and spiritually connected. This one focuses on the emotions provoked through a situation or a moment in our world, brought about by the various natural miracles that occur upon this planet of ours. It's beautiful. But I will say this, the author is not afraid to shy away from some of the more heavier topics, especially concerning the coronavirus, or COVID-19. During one of the chapters of this book, it actually addresses the situation of that time, how the world just seemed to stand still at that moment. And that was totally accurate in my opinion. While some people might say, well, the world went on, sure. But a lot of us, the world simply stopped because we were locked down in our homes, unable to leave. A lot of us, though, we still went to work. But even then, it was silent. People were waiting and looking at the news, hearing about the latest death toll, or hearing how the pandemic was spreading further and further, growing more and more dangerous. The world just seemed to stop at that moment. When 2020 seemed so promising, only to launch us into a global pandemic that is still ongoing today, albeit at a much gradually lower percentage than it was before. But that is one of the things I believe that Yamini Tanwar does very, very well. And dear author, if you are listening to this, I apologize if I have butchered your name in any way. But regardless, so I'm going to keep this short. let's move on to some of my favorite quotes, and I will explain about them as to why they stick out to me the most. So, from the book, these right here were some of my favorite of the short poems. And you will see that a lot of these came from the one-liners section, if you ever decide to pick this one up for yourself. But a lot of these, while short, teach, in my opinion, a good lesson. At least, just from my perspective. But with all that being said, let me go ahead and just get started. So first of all, poetry is an emotion, not mere words. And I will say this right now. Poetry is not my forte. Though I have been taught that it is more of an emotional type of writing, rather than simply just writing a story. Or in some cases, you create a story through poetry. But poetry writing in itself is an exercise of emotion. You want to be able to express emotions through your writing. And a lot of people can do that as well in their own creative writings. But poetry is another way to speak to someone. You have to use as few words as possible to create a message. And this quote really sticks out to me because it personifies that struggle. You have to process all these emotions. You have to translate them into as few words as possible and create it into an art form. Hence why poetry in itself can be one of the most difficult and yet one of the most enticing and exciting bits of writing there is. Next up, every story has a different genre, just like sky changes its color. Now, with this one here, that is absolutely true, both in a physical and in a philosophical way to put it. Let's face it, every human being on this earth is vastly different. Just like there are so many different stories to tell in fictional works or even nonfiction. There are so many stories stacked on top of each other. And in a way, you could look at people as walking books. You could see them as walking history text. Some of them have lived for so long, living through different decades and various periods of history. They could be walking history textbooks and you wouldn't even know it unless you sit down and talk to them. Learn their stories. Read them like a book. And others, they go through struggles. They have their own dramas, their own romances, their own action tales. But the question is, will you be willing to learn about them, to read about their story from their perspective? Every single person has a different flavor of story. Every person in every book out there, there's always a new story to learn. And the question is, will you be able to seek them out? And speaking of stories, this next quote here. Behind every successful story, there is a tale of hidden failures. This one is a profound truth in my personal opinion. Let's face it, we all have seen a lot of these famous people, these famous writers, famous actors, famous script writers, whatever. But the thing is, none of them started out that way. They've all gone through failure after failure, struggle after struggle, just to create that one successful story. A lot of the writers I have talked to, or even some of these biographies I've actually started reading, detail how that individual has gone through a massive struggle throughout their life, being punched through failure after failure, feeling themselves become more and more downgraded, until sometimes it feels like there is no more point in going on. And yet, in my personal opinion, there is always that one light at the end of the tunnel. And in my perspective, every failure is just another brick leading to that success story that could be your life. The question is, just how many bricks have you laid down? How many times have you failed just to climb higher to that one success? Honestly, this quote is a heavy thinker, and it's something I encourage a lot of you to think about for yourselves. Write it down if you have to, but look at it and really think. Really ponder it for a second. And finally, quote 4. You know what's beautiful? The scars on her face, yet him adoring her beauty. Where do I begin with this one? I'm going to say this right now. Body image is one of the biggest things we as a human race deal with constantly. A lot of us want to fulfill that perfect standard of body type. We sacrifice ourselves, our mental and our physical health at times, just to reach either that peak or to rise up to that certain image that we have in our minds. Some of us men want to be these hulking titans of muscle. We want to improve ourselves to either impress other people or to feel better about ourselves. A lot of women have to deal with the fact of trying to change their weights as well as just sacrificing their health especially. You will see a lot of these diet and medications are targeting women more often than they do men. And honestly, it's a sick practice that works countless times. And the problem is, people have no positive self-image of themselves. We try to conform to this societal standard. And yet, if people just took a step back and really looked at themselves, thinking, could I just be proud of myself? Be proud of who I am? A lot of the times, people look at the physical attributes of a person and associate that with beauty. Myself, while physical looks are a bonus, in my opinion, that's all they are, a bonus. The thing that I look at is the individual, the person's behavior, their personality, their soul leaking out through their actions. And in my opinion, if they have a beautiful soul, then that can reflect in their bodies, in my personal opinion. But either way, a person's body is a temple. And the thing is, a lot of times, people should learn to just accept that is who they are. You can strive to be better, strive to achieve more. But if it comes at a cost to yourself, both emotionally, physically, and even mentally, then it is really not worth it. In the end of the day, acceptance could be the best medicine. Being proud of who you are as a person. Learning to accept that you are who you are. You don't need to change for anyone else. Change for yourself if you really want to. But changing yourself for others is a pathway to self-destruction. And in my opinion, a lot of the relationships I have had and a lot of the people I have met have always had this negative commentary about themselves. And yet every single time I've told them, hey, you are good just the way you are. And a lot of the relationships I have, especially with my girlfriend nowadays, she struggles a lot with viewing herself as beautiful, and yet I am more than willing to assure her every day that she is beautiful. For a lot of you out there who have partners who go through the same thing, just keep on reassuring them. Let them know that in your eyes, no matter what they may look like, they will always be beautiful in your eyes. That they will always be beautiful in your eyes. Let them know this. Tell them this every day, no matter what. And with that being said, let's move on to our overall score. So, for my second dive into poetry, I would have to give Home to Soul a good 10 out of 10. This book was a very quick read, only like 160 something pages. And in my opinion, despite it being so quick, it teaches a lot of good, profound lessons. And it teaches you about the beauty that there is in nature. And in my opinion, I'd recommend checking this out. Give this author a chance. At least that is my perspective. And if you guys have any other poetry recommendations, please feel free to let me know. I am more than happy to dive further into this literary world, this literature section that I have yet to explore. It's a new sea for me to look at, and I am fully ready to dive in headfirst. But for my second dive in, this one fulfilled my expectations, as well as gave me a new perspective on our world as a whole. So, solid 10 out of 10. So if you guys are interested in checking out other indie authors, please feel free to check out the playlist here that I'll leave here at the end of the video. Or, if you're interested to check out some of the other books that I've covered, not just indie authors, feel free to click that playlist as well. In my opinion, you guys, indie authors deserve a lot of love and respect. They put their hard work and souls into these books, and I highly recommend supporting them. A lot of them go and fall in between the cracks, and they deserve our support. So, once again, guys, thank you so much for listening to this crazy man's ramblings. I'm hoping I can inspire you to check out this book for yourself, especially if you're wanting to dive into poetry yourself, or if you want to read another good poetry book. So, if you like this video, feel free to leave a like, comment your thoughts on this review down below, or if you have any other suggestions for future poetry reads. And if you like what I do here on this channel, please feel free to subscribe for more. And once again, fellow readers, thank you so much for listening. Please feel free to stay tuned for the next video. And again, you guys, just thank you for listening. This is Rambling Collector signing off for now. Have a great day, my fellow readers.